guys, welcome back for another Bachelorette recap. Today we're gonna talk about what went down last night on episode 9. So the episode starts off with Rachel doing a cute little strut down the street in a very gorgeous skirt that I really need to know where she got from because I want one. So this is the episode where the last 3 remaining guys, Peter, Brian, and Eric, get to meet Rachel's family. And first up is Peter. Rachel and Peter end up going to a children's clothing store to actually buy some gifts for Rachel's sister, who is currently pregnant. I thought it was really weird how at no point in time that they were in that store did they ever talk about having children of their own. That was very, very weird to me. So Peter and Rachel sit down and have a little chit chat before they go into her parents' house. And now is the moment he finally decides to tell her that he's falling in love with her. That moment was not in any way, shape, or form romantic or sweet or endearing to me whatsoever. I really felt like Peter felt he needed to say those words in order for Rachel to keep him around. I really didn't feel any true emotion and feeling when he said that. Rachel did say it back to him and they had a cute little moment, but I just wasn't feeling it. Okay, I need somebody in the comment section to let me know whose house that is, because when I started watching this season of The Bachelorette, of course I went back and found all the little clips of Rachel with Nick on the previous Bachelor season, and that was not the house that she brought Nick to when he came to meet her family. So I want to know whose house that was. Granted, they did a very nice job fixing it up. There were pictures of Rachel and her family on the walls and some Cosby Show type artwork, but I want to know whose house that is for real. So Peter and Rachel get into the house, hugs all around. He gets to meet her mother, her sister's husband, a cousin was there, and Rachel's uncle and aunt. Of course, Rachel's father is nowhere to be seen. He wasn't there when she brought Nick home, and he's not gonna be meeting any one of these 3 men this time around. I'm not at all surprised. I truly believe he's one of those high-class professional dudes who has no time for reality TV. So Rachel, if you are engaged at the end of this and you and your man decide to televise your wedding, just know that your father won't be there. So Rachel and Peter sit down with her family and have a little chit chat, and Peter proceeds to talk about how scared he was after last week's episode and the rose ceremony, and how he felt like he was this close from leaving Rachel's life. And I started thinking about how he was wording what he was saying to the family, and it really sounded to me like that was his motivation for telling Rachel that he was falling in love with her, because he's not ready to get off this show. He wants to stick around a little longer, maybe because he truly does want to see where things go with Rachel, and possibly for ulterior reasons as well. Peter then sits down with Rachel's mom and they have a little talk, and Peter is very honest, very open about the fact that he is not ready right now to propose. He loves Rachel, he is falling in love with her, as he said, but he does not want to ask her to marry him if he's not 100% sure that an engagement is going to lead to a marriage. And she is all about it. She is all about taking it slow, not rushing. She has no problem with Peter's reservations. She actually prefers the fact that he's been a slow mover throughout the process. And Peter actually asks her for her permission to date Rachel. One really cute little thing that happened at the end of Peter's visit, he's in the kitchen area, it looks like, on the floor playing around with Rachel's nephew. And somebody asks the nephew, he's only 3, who is that? Who are you playing with? And he says, Peter or Pete, something along those lines. And the cousin who's standing there with Rachel and everyone else around says, oh, I was gonna give him a new name, Winner. I did notice that there are multiple people in Rachel's family that are down with the swirl. I did notice that Rachel's sister's husband is white, and also her uncle's wife that was there at the house to meet Peter is white as well. So hey, Rachel's good. If she ends up with either Peter or Brian, the two non-black men left, she's gonna be fine because her family is clearly okay with the swirl life. Next in line to meet Rachel's family is Eric. But before that, we have another little gossip session between now Peter and Brian. So Peter and Brian are chit-chatting. They could not be sitting any further apart from one another in that room. Peter's sitting there talking about the arrogance of this guy. At one point, Peter's talking about how uncomfortable and how much he dislikes the fact that the girl that he's dating, that he's interested in, that he's falling for, has, two other boyfriends. And he really is not interested in being in a room with Brian right now. Nice try, Peter. The fact that you do not want to be sitting in a room talking to Brian right now has nothing to do with the fact that you're both dating the same woman. You just flat out don't like Brian. Let's keep it real. So Eric comes into the fold. Everybody greets him very warmly. They seem to really like his vibe. He gets a chance to talk to Rachel's mom, of course. He talks to her sister. They find out that the longest relationship he's ever had was his most recent, which was 2 years ago, and it lasted 8 months. And he was very honest and said that he was not in love with the woman. And a very interesting comment he made was that he said that that woman or that relationship prepared him for Rachel. Now we come down to Brian, and I love how the producers set up this whole episode with Peter being first, followed by Eric, and then Brian, because we all saw the previews last week. We know what's about to go down between Brian and Rachel's family. So before they're even out of the hotel room, we gotta talk about the damn watches again. Of course, Brian has been wearing his watch every second of the day since he got it. I did notice Rachel did not wear hers when she was with Peter and Eric, but of course, now that she's with Brian, she puts her watch on so they can be twinsies. Of course she's gonna wear the watch. She is all into Brian, and there's no way that she was not gonna wear it. So Rachel and Brian leave the hotel to go and meet her friends first. Then they're gonna go on to meet her family members. And we have another gossip session between Peter and Eric about Brian. And this one is the one I was waiting for because I'm well aware of the fact that Peter is not a fan of Brian, and Peter let it be known, talking about that he's not the biggest fan of Brian and that he's from Miami, the land of fake boobs, fake ass, and fake cheeks. If you guys are not aware, if you haven't been on the blogs or reading some of the comments on different clips from the show, everybody has been talking about Brian and his fake cheeks. These cheeks, the one on the face, and how full of filler his face must be. Now, I'm not saying he does or does not have filler, but when I saw his parents last week during the hometown, I didn't believe that that was a possibility anymore, because both of his parents do have very full, high, chipmunk-like cheeks. So I don't think Brian has filler, but Peter does make a good point that it is a real possibility. But the shade, Peter, the shade. Rachel and Brian go and meet a couple of her friends, and they're actually the two girlfriends of hers that signed her up day one for The Bachelor, Nick's season. But the part that really got to me was that Rachel was very blatant and honest and told her friends right in front of Brian that she thought he was a douchebag. So Brian and Rachel come into her family's home, and Brian has a look of terror on his face. Did you guys notice that? He looked petrified, just handshaking and hugging everybody when he walked in. He was nervous AF. So they all sit down and they start talking, and Rachel's mother goes in. She asks him, you know, when this is all said and done, and if you guys are together, you do get married, as life goes on, you know, there are issues that sometimes come up between wife and mother. If your wife has issues with your mother, whose side are you gonna take? Who is going to be the priority? Brian says, my wife is the priority. We'll see about that. So everybody comes to the dinner table, and Brian is just bombarded with questions. Rachel's family is just firing off all these questions to him. He looks like he's about to be sick. He ends up excusing himself from the table. And at that point, Rachel has kind of had it with her family, and she kind of gets into it a little bit with her mother. She was really, really pissed about how they came at Brian, and she said, you guys didn't do this yesterday when you met Eric. You didn't do this to Peter. Why are you coming at Brian so hard? And then her very strange brother-in-law, who, there's just something about that man that rubs me the wrong way. Something about Rachel's sister's husband that I just don't like. He has to put his 2 cents in, talking about, you're being very emotional with how you're speaking to your mother right now. I don't know if he thinks it's his place to be head of the household, man of the house, because Rachel's father isn't there right now. I don't know who he thinks he is, but he needs to fall back. So I don't know where Brian went when he excused himself from the table. He disappeared, and then the next thing you know, he has a little sit-down chit-chat with Rachel's mom, and he lays it all out on the line, talks about how much he loves Rachel, how much he wants to be with her, and he asks Rachel's mother for her permission to propose to her for Rachel's hand in marriage. Rachel's mother says, yes, because I trust my daughter, because I trust Rachel, I will give you that permission. Because just the way that she emphasized, I trust my daughter, I trust Rachel, not you, Rico Suave, I trust my daughter to make the best decision. So, okay, you can have my permission. So after all 3 guys meet Rachel's family, they're now off to Spain. So after they get to Spain, Rachel is of course gonna have some one-on-one time with each guy, and she starts it off with Eric. So Rachel sits down with Eric, and she does the best she can to really try to pull out as much specific information as possible from him about his true feelings for her. And Eric is just talking in these circles. He cannot answer any questions straight out that Rachel is asking him. And the look on Rachel's face as she's sitting there listening to Eric talk is just one of confusion mixed with disbelief, mixed with boredom. If you guys are not familiar with the Bachelor franchise and how it works, when it gets down to this point, usually it's the final 2, but in this case it's now 3. The final 3 guys, Rachel will have the opportunity of foregoing staying in her own separate room as well as the guy, and the 2 of them being offered a fantasy suite to spend the night together. So the opportunity is presented to them, and they both agree that that's what they want to do. The shady cameraman, I tell you, the morning after, of course, you see a very nice shot of an unmade, rumpled, sheeted bed, of course, giving the indication, the assumption that they slept together. Who knows whether they did or not. If they did, Rachel, for your sake and for ABC's sake, I hope that they covered their behinds and did an extensive physical for all 30 guys from day one. I hope they put all of those men through physicals as well as STD tests, because Rachel, you really don't want to have any burning issues, if you know what I mean.
Let it burn. Ooh, gotta let it burn.
So next, Rachel has a one-on-one with Peter. They go to a vineyard, they drink some wine, they do some cutesy little things, and then we get serious. This is the moment that they decide to really lay everything out on the table. And he says, I'm not interested in being engaged just to be engaged. No, when I ask a woman to marry me, from that point, we're pretty much married, just without having filled out the paperwork. Rachel tells him that she pretty much feels the opposite. She doesn't mind being engaged to just be engaged. She didn't use those words, but that's how I interpreted it. She wants to be engaged and then continue dating, in a sense, getting to know one another, taking things one day at a time. She doesn't mean she wants to be engaged today and married tomorrow. She could get engaged today and still not have a wedding until a year from now. That is really, really a huge difference that I think is a clear, obvious deal breaker. So we won't know what is gonna happen between Rachel and Peter for another 2 weeks, because the episode actually ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And next week is not a regular episode, it's going to be the Men Tell All. Lee's gonna be there, Kenny's gonna be there. It is gonna be a very, very interesting episode that I can't wait for. And then the following week after that, we'll finally get to see what goes down between Rachel and these 3 guys and who ends up being her fiance, because she said she didn't want a boyfriend, so we'll see who is her fiance at the end of all this in 2 weeks. So that's it, guys. That's my recap for this week's episode. If you did enjoy it, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe and come back next week. I cannot wait. I'm really gonna be getting into this Men Tell All episode. I cannot wait to hear what Lee has to say, DeMario, everybody. So definitely tune in and we're gonna talk all about it. Bye.